Hello, YouTube. I am going to be doing my ranking of my favorite Marvel TV shows of all time. And that mainly is going to be, live action TV shows. Cartoons are excluded. I'm going to cover that in another video in the future. And by the way, this is going to be a two-parter video. So this is going to be part one covering the first five TV shows, and then the next five as well. So it goes from, my list goes from worst to best, or sort of my least favorite to my favorite. So it's that's kind of how it is. Hopefully you enjoy the video. Who knows, maybe you'll agree. Starting at number 10. My number 10 favorite Marvel TV series is Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. This show is not canon to the MCU. As far as I know, I think it's a multiverse type of thing, a deal, because the multiverse is so prominent and stuff like that. And I guess even with other Marvel shows, they kind of made Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.'s made references, I guess, to other Marvel shows, stuff like that. So it could very well could be a multiverse type of situation. So I guess that's probably the case for a show like Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. So Agent Coulson, and he's the best character of the show anyways. I think Clark Gregg gives a really, really great nuanced performance as the character. He was a fan favorite in the movies, and I enjoyed him as well. He was a cool side character. He was also, fun fact, he was also a character that was not created in the comic books. He was just a character that they made up for the movies. They brought him in the first Iron Man movie. So yeah, and I thought Clark Gregg, he brings that charm and, the sort of wit of the character and makes him cool. There's also another character that I like a lot. His name is Glenn Talbot. Glenn Talbot is played by Adrian Pasdar. Adrian Pasdar, he gives a great performance as Glenn Talbot. He's a character that has gone through a lot in the series mainly. He's also kind of a funny type of character. Him and Coulson sort of go back and forth with each other and butt heads in terms of this is how we should do this is how we should do that. So, and Adrian Pasdar gives a great performance. He also becomes a character called Graviton, who is a character that can control all of gravity. So that's such a crazy superpower in and of itself. My introduction to Graviton was in Avengers EMH. It's a cartoon, Earth's Mightiest Heroes. So it was also very unexpected. And there's also another character as well. His name is the Absorbing Man. He's also he's a character that can absorb the contents of something and basically just become that form of that for instance, he can absorb a specific metal, and he'll become that kind of metal. His body will turn into that form of metal, and then he'll go after somebody. So that is actually a great character, and I think they did him well in the series mainly. Well, in terms of capturing the power set of the character. The action's not bad for a TV series. I think it's sometimes the CGI can be hit or miss, but I think that the CGI is not bad. It's but I know sometimes in some episodes they could, with certain characters that they use CGI for, or even background sets or something, they can be a little questionable or whatever. Not as big as something in a movie set or even the Disney Plus shows, because they have I think more money than something like Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., but I still think that Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is able to do as much as they can with the budget that they have, and I think it's not terrible. I think it's fine. There's another sort of there's probably I think there's these characters, Fitzsimmons. That's the name of those characters. They are basically scientists who are in love with each other. They're in a relationship. I just think that's the weakest part of the series, because it's just something that I never really bought into that much. I mean, I think the actors, they do a good enough job with those characters, but I don't know. I just never really bought it. It's just not something that. Bought it, as well as at the same time, I don't know, I just think that it's not really my favorite part of the series. I think it kind of just slows it down a little bit, but I know they wanted to bring in some extra character moments and not just make it about Coulson or the other agents as much. I think season 4 of this series is probably the best season, I think, out of all the seasons they've had. They've had 7 seasons. I think this is the best season that they've had. I think Ghost Rider, he's the best part. He was in season 4. I thought, Ghost Rider is one of my favorite characters. I thought they did really, really well. They brought in Robbie Reyes, who's a new version of Ghost Rider, and so they made him super cool. His the chain that he has, the fiery skull, everything, just makes him so much more cooler. I think his fight scenes are really, really awesome as well. Whenever they show his powers, the CGI I think is better when they show it that way. Anyways, when they show that off, so that's really, really awesome. They show off a dynamic between him and his brother, which is a little emotional. I wasn't oh my gosh, whatever, but emotional as in it sort of grabs you and makes you relate to the character a little bit more. It's oh, okay, now I understand. Coming in at number 9 is Spider-Man from 1977. It's a TV series that came out, yes, back in 1977, like 44 years ago. I think the intro to this show is really memorable. It's like a saxophone type of thing. Like they play like a saxophone, I guess, during the intro. And so, yeah, I just find that to be really, really funny. And it's in my head. It's like that tune stuck in my head, so I kind of enjoy it sometimes. Nicholas Hammond, he is the actor who plays Peter Parker / Spider-Man in the series. And back then, when I saw that, even though like I'm not, this series is way before my time, but like, when I saw that, the clips like on YouTube, I would just find, his Spider-Man, his Peter Parker to be definitely not as great as the other ones. I think he's like my least favorite, but I still find him to be okay for back then when they were displaying like Peter Parker as a whole. He wasn't in high school, he was in, I guess, college. I thought he was fine for back then. He gave it a decent performance. I mean, the effects back then, they didn't have any CGI, but I thought it was impressive what they were doing. They used a real person, like a real stuntman, for the Spider-Man scenes, so that was interesting. And they had like a specific POV type of shot, I guess, like sort of shot like, when he was like shooting webs, doing all these crazy action scenes, so that was kind of fascinating, and I really liked that and dig it a lot. And of course, as I mentioned before, the music in certain scenes, I think I like the way that they used it. I think it's a saxophone that they used. The music is like, it just sticks in my head. I laugh at it at the same time as well as, I don't know, it just sounds, I don't know, it fits the scene in a weird way, I guess is what I would say. I do appreciate the series as well. There's a level of appreciation for the series because of like how corny it is, because like of something that came out in the 70s, as well as at the same time, I feel like it embraced it really well with the corniness. Coming in at number 8 is WandaVision. WandaVision is a series that I think made Wanda more interesting, than what she had been like in the other sort of things that she's been in the movies, and everything else developed her more as a character. There's not a lot of action in the series, which I think is like, gives the show more room to breathe, different from a regular standard superhero TV show. So performances were really good. Obviously, Paul Bettany as the Vision and Elizabeth Olsen as Wanda Maximoff as Scarlet Witch. They did well, and I think was it Tiana Paris as Monica Rambeau. Performances were decent. They were good. Agatha Harkness, she is a character that Catherine Hahn, who played the character, she did well with it. Very unique performance. If I had to be honest, I think episodes 4 and 9 are probably my favorite episodes, and because 4 was sort of introducing us to what's happening outside of the sort of sitcom world that Wanda made. Just like, okay, what happened? Is this real? Is this not real? It's like, yeah, it is them discovering that Wanda did something. So I thought episodes 4 and 9 were really good. Episode 8 was also pretty interesting because it went into Wanda and her backstory and what was her story about with her brother, her childhood, everything like that. So that was a little bit interesting, emotional, that kind of thing. And even the backstory of Agatha Harkness and what made her the witch that she is in the series that we see later on. And it makes me curious how the series will tie into Doctor Strange 2. We know that, after, Scarlet Witch, she leaves Westview, or that area, I think in New Jersey. She's trying to find her kids. We heard she's going to be in Doctor Strange, so maybe she'll be the villain in the next Doctor Strange movie. We don't know. It's all just speculation at this point, but we have no clue. But hopefully they'll find a way to tell us. So coming in at number 7 is Luke Cage. Mike Coulter, who is the main actor who plays Luke Cage, is good. He played the role of Luke Cage really well. He balanced like the comedic aspects of the character, the dramatic aspects of him. So he balanced those different sort of aspects of the character really well, in my opinion. And I think, I think what he's like in the comics as well as in certain iterations as well. Very believable. The character of Cottonmouth, who's portrayed by a very well-known actor, Mahershala Ali, was very menacing. Sort of unpredictable, and he was a character that didn't have any brute strength. He wanted to go after Luke Cage. He was just like, I'm going to go after him regardless. My favorite episode of the entire series was Season 2, Episode 10, where Iron Fist showed up, where both Luke Cage and Iron Fist teamed up. And it was kind of like this series that they had in the comics called Heroes for Hire. They're both like street-level characters. They both work to stop petty crimes and stuff like that, street-level kind of crimes. And they displayed that really well. And that episode really encapsulated that whole thing. I think Season 2 was a little weaker than Season 1, in my opinion. I thought Season 1 was a better season. It was a cool nod to Luke Cage's costume in the series, and I think in the first season, like the way that they showed his costume and he was making fun of it, being self-aware. I agree that Cottonmouth should have stayed alive, considering he was like the best part of the first season and, the best villain. But I think I'm in one of the people in the minority, or sort of believes that, Luke Cage's brother, him being the villain for the rest of the season, was not a bad idea. I thought that was fine. They tied it in a little bit with the rest of the season and with the character. So, and they had a cool fight scene at the end. He was like a robotic type of character. He had armor from Hammer Industries, which is tied to the MCU, even though I don't think this is actually MCU canon. Multiverse, maybe. Like, side characters were fine. That's all I could really say about that. They were just fine. They were not, like, the best. I think probably in, like, the future seasons, they kind of made them a little bit more likable, but they were fine for the most part. It's fun. So coming in at my number 6 is Loki. Loki came out this year in 2021. It had 6 episodes. I would say that the score for this series is probably the best score from any Marvel project that's been released from, like, MCU or whatever. I think they use this thing called, like, a theremin. A theremin, I think, is like it's like a weird instrument. It's like an old school type of, like, alien sounding, like, it just making it sound like, you know, alien type. It's like, you should search it on YouTube. It's really cool. But, you know, they added that, just made it much more, you know, compelling. I just love the score for this. Episode 3 of the series is probably, I think, the weakest because, you know, it's kind of just, I guess, like a lot of people said, it was like kind of filler, but it did sort of explore a little bit of the dynamic between Loki and his variant Sylvie. It wasn't bad. As usual, Tom Hiddleston delivers a great performance as the character of Loki. This variant version of Loki from the 2012 Loki, so, you know, that was pretty neat. And then, of course, Owen Wilson. I think he's a welcome addition to the MCU, and I love the dynamic between him and Tom Hiddleston in the episodes that we got to see him as. Their friendship was pretty great, and it was one of the best parts of the series. I really liked it a lot. And I hope to see him again in season 2, which I believe he will be. The CGI in the series, mainly like, you know, like the backgrounds and you know, just in some of the action scenes and stuff was really like cool, and you could tell that they put a lot of money into this, you know, specifically. Set design as well, very different from any other sort of MCU type of thing that I've ever seen. You know, old-fashioned, retro, I guess is how I would describe it, unless I'm using those terms wrong. Classic Loki is like my favorite iteration of Loki, like, ever. And I think classic Loki really just stole the show, and I just love seeing that costume. Classic Loki just nailed it. And he was a hero, because he stopped the cloud monster, Alioth. He Who Remains is another version of Kang the Conqueror, who's like a time-traveling villain in the comic books, played by Jonathan Majors. He did a great job in there, and, you know, he was different from any sort of mustache-twirling villain. He was very kind of goofy, and I know a lot of people gave, like, there was backlash about, like, oh, his character's too goofy and weird, and he was too cartoony, too over the top, but I thought he was just fine. I think he delivered it really well. Different from someone like Thanos or, you know, just very serious characters. I'm excited to see what they do with him in Ant-Man 3. Coming in at number 5, Falcon and Winter Soldier. I think the relationship between Sam Wilson and Bucky Barnes, I mean, that's kind of like the grabbing point of the show. Very fun to watch on screen. John Walker, who is the new Captain America, through the 3 or 4 episodes that we got to see him in, was very dramatic. You got to see, like, what he had done, like, you know, the super soldier serum, him taking it because he was getting attacked by people who didn't have the super soldier serum, and he was with Bucky, and he had the super soldier serum, though, but you got to see him just struggle because of that. The use of Zemo wasn't bad. Zemo is played by Daniel Bruhl. He had, like, the purple mask on. That was kind of cool. They used him pretty well. At the end of the series, he goes back to the Raft, which is basically like a prison for supervillains. Granted, he's not like the Abomination or any other sort of, like, you know, mutant type of character, but he is pretty dangerous. He's a master planner, in a way. That's what they did, and they developed him more, his loathing of super soldiers. That was kind of an interesting aspect of the character that we got to see, and he wasn't just a straight-up villain, and I hope to see him again in the future. Sam Wilson as Captain America, thought that was pretty cool. I like the idea of that. I know a lot of people are like, oh, they don't need to do that, but they did it in the comics, and also I just think that's a new thing, you know, bringing it in. And I like the costume they gave him. Looks really cool. The way that they integrated, like, his wings, vibranium wings, with the actual suit and upgraded the suit, that was nice. The score for the series is also pretty good as well. Not as good as Loki, but I still thought it was cool, just like the vibes for that. Shield throwing montage, I think in like episode 5. I just like the use of the music in that, and just like sort of the editing in that as well, and the sound effects, and, you know, just that was the best part of the episode, I think, in episode 5, was just the shield throwing. In episode 5, they had the beginning of it, they had like there's a fight between Falcon, Winter Soldier, and John Walker. Falcon and Winter Soldier were teaming up to fight John Walker, who took the super soldier serum, and that was an intense fight. The music, the score that was brought into it, that just made the scene even more tense, powerful. It got me really hyped when I saw it the first time. I was just like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. The main villain of the series is a character named Carly Morgenthau, who is part of a team called the Flag Smashers. In the comics, there's a character named Flag Smasher that goes up against the original Captain America, Steve Rogers, but in this specific TV series, the Flag Smashers is just like a whole group. They, you know, made her like a young sort of character, still kind of like trying to figure out what's going on, fighting for what she thinks is right. But sometimes she would be a little too like ruthless and just like wanting to a little too much, that I was just like, yeah, it can, But, you know, the actress did a good job. Yeah, that's just what it is for that listing so far. So be on the lookout for part 2, where I'm going to give you the next and last 5, and I'll lead into number 1. what was my number one favorite Marvel live-action TV series. As always, like, subscribe, leave a comment, all that fun stuff, and I'll see you next time.